Good morning. Y'all, I had a crazy night and morning this morning. I'm also struggling with my allergies. So, what I've learned, and I remember this from back in the day when I got my cats. So, when I was living in Kansas City, I moved out when I was 17 years old. And I got Daisy and her sister, Tallulah, back then from a colleague that I had when I was still working at the chiropractic office. And yeah, I'm allergic to cats. But then, since having them for so long, my sinuses really, it just got used to the cats being around. But then, because I was on the road all last week for about 8 days and I'm coming back home, oh my goodness, I am feeling it this week. But literally, okay, so last night I was in bed, I was sleeping, and at 11 o'clock, the fire alarms went off. I was like, oh my goodness. This is the third time that the fire alarms have gone off since I started living here in this new place in November of 23. And I was like, ugh. So I went outside. I saw all my neighbors. And I was like, what's going on? The fire department showed up. There was one cop car that showed up, and they're like, yep, this is just a false alarm. We're so sorry, you guys. So then I went back up and I took my butt to bed. So that happened last night. And then I got up this morning, and the first thing that I see this morning is Momo, my little black cat. She had both of her paws inside of my elephant ear plant. And I said, girl, you better get your butt out of there. So now I spent the morning cleaning up all the soil that she likes to dig out of there. I'm like, oh my goodness. So, but it's been good. So hello, good morning, y'all, as you're joining me today. Hey, I'm here every single week, 9 a.m. Eastern time every Thursday. And this live stream goes out to Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and all of the different platforms, Hannah Kessler platforms, and the Money Multiplier platforms. So, hey, if you cannot join live every week, this segment, the Money Mornings with Hannah, is also a podcast show. So you can go to Apple Podcasts, Google, iHeartRadio, wherever you stream your podcast from, and you can go and listen to back episodes. And I encourage y'all to do so. I'll tell you this as well, okay? Because I have my Thursday morning show, Money Mornings with Hannah. But then on Tuesdays, the Money Multiplier podcast that launches every Tuesday with a new episode. And I would encourage y'all, if you did not watch last Tuesday's episode, the one that aired on October 14th, go and watch that on the Money Multiplier podcast. I would encourage going to the YouTube one because of just what I'm sharing on the screen. But a lot of y'all reached out to me really enjoying that episode and just the tool that I use to track my net worth and literally how I keep on top of my premiums I'm putting into my policies and how I'm expanding my banking system without overextending myself. So I know that can kind of get a little, it's a little fearful, right? When you're spending 20, 30, even 50% of your income going towards policy premium, you get a little fearful and you're like, ooh, this is a little nerve wracking. But right, once you really stay into it, correct your mindset. Remember last week's episode about the human behaviors that we have to overcome. It's quite liberating, honestly, because hey, more premiums I'm putting towards my policy, premiums equal my solution. And that then thus means it's me having less dependence on banks and other financing companies, right? Or like I was in a meeting yesterday and this one gentleman said, he says, it's almost like the people need to have the banks and use the banks rather than the banks using the people. And I was like, ooh, that's good. I'm going to start stealing that line. So welcome back. Yes, so I just wanted to talk about that 1014 podcast episode. Go and watch that. And if you want that tool of the net worth statement, send me an email, hannah@themoneymultiplier.com. I'll post it up on the screen. There's my email address. And today, I'm excited about today's episode because this is something that I don't talk enough about, okay? And it's specifically geared towards my business owners. A lot of people want to know, well, okay, yes, I understand that I can use this infinite banking concept and my whole life policies to finance the purchases in my personal life, like my car, my taxes, houses, vacations, credit cards, college tuition. But how do I really use this when it comes to my business? So this, in my opinion, is one of the best tools, especially if you have employees, instead of going the traditional routes of like offering them a 401k or other benefits. You can really utilize a whole life policy to offer your key employees these benefits. You can own a policy on your business partner. You can use the cash values within that policy to finance equipment for the business, put back into the business, let's say for marketing dollars or paid per click ads that you're doing. So you can really use the cash values during the lifetime of your business to finance these different purchases. But then also, when the time happens, because it's not an if it happens, it's a when it happens, when the time comes that you graduate, or what I say, when Jesus calls you home, then there's a death benefit that's going to get paid out. And that can really be beneficial for the other living business partner to carry on the business, to buy out maybe your spouse. So I'm going to kind of get into those specific details here this morning. Let's talk about this too, because as a business owner, like I mentioned, you can borrow against it for expansion, payroll, even emergencies. Okay. I know a lot of us like to hold our funds inside of a savings account at the bank for emergencies. But I'm telling you, my policies, there's a certain amount of money that I just leave inside of my policies. And it's 3 months of my expenses. And that 3 months of the expenses I keep within my policies. And let me get even more technical, because if you've been following me on my journey, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, Hannah, you also tell me that you leave 3 months of your expenses inside of your regular bank account. Yes, yes, yes. Here's what I do. I keep 3 months of my expenses inside of my regular checking account, and I keep 3 months of my expenses inside of my policies. And so if something happens, I got 6 months of expenses covered, but I'm not leaving it all inside of the traditional bank account. I'm leaving it inside of my policies. And then, when time happens and I need the money, I don't have to go and get a bank approval for them to lend me money because I prepped for myself over here. Isn't it kind of funny that when you are in a dire situation, and let's say you lose your job or you lose your business, something happens, and you try to go to a bank and say, hey, Mr. Banker, I've been banking with you for like 20 years. Look at my track history. I'm out of a job right now, and I need some money to float me along just for these next few months until I get this new job set up for myself. And they're like, no, man, we don't want to work with you. Right? Isn't it kind of funny that when I need the money, the banks aren't there, but when I have the money and I don't need it, they're like sending me all this mail. They're calling me up and they're saying, hey, you want to borrow money from us? And it's like, I don't need you right now. Anyways, a short little tangent. So you as a business owner, there's a few different ways that you can utilize your policy for business expenses, offering it to your employees for retention, for loyalty. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about key man policies first. Okay. So key man insurance, or sometimes people refer to it as a key person insurance. And this is you as the business owner owning a policy on your key employee in your business. So the example I use all the time, just because it's natural to me, Dad was an owner of the chiropractic office, and so he had associate docs within that clinic, Dr. Jeremy, Dr. Joe. He also had Susie, who was his right hand front desk person. Like if Susie were to quit, basically Brent were to quit. Like that's how important she was within the business. And so Brent would own the policy on those important key people within his business. Because one big factor of it is that Brent would own the policy. Let's say Susie was the insured person, so the death benefits on her, and then the beneficiary is Brent. Because if something were to happen to Susie and she were to pass away, Brent's going to need that death benefit money to replace her, find a replacement for Susie. Because when Susie leaves, there's going to be a loss of income. He's going to have to go and cover some recruitment costs, right? It keeps your operation stable during this transitionary period that you're in. And it can also be used for buyouts or even restructuring with that key employee that you have. So, whole life, right? As we all know, my IBC community, as we all know, it's not really just about the death benefit. Yes, there's also the cash value, and that cash value is an asset to Brent during this time that Susie is there and working. Because what Brent can do, because he's the owner of this contract, he can use the cash values to create benefits for Susie. Like what I remember mom and dad used to do all the time is they would have that employee go and find themselves like the health insurance that they want, the dental insurance, the vision insurance, whatever it is, some of those benefits that we can offer to them. They would have them go and find the insurance that they want, and then the policy would pay for that other benefits in the insurance that key employee wanted. So that's a way that we would create the loyalty and retention and protection, as well as being a business owner. And then also, to even go deeper into it, these can even be set up as like executive bonus plans, right? So like you're kind of even offering your employees saying, hey, if you allow me to put this policy on your body, every year you could even use the cash values to give them bonuses or even profit shares of your business if that's what you want to do, and using the cash values to give them bonuses, give them these profit shares that you're allowing them. Now, a lot of people like to call this, like in the corporate ladder, the golden handcuffs, you know what I mean? Because what's really cool about whole life insurance, and it's kind of different than like other plans like the 401ks that corporations will offer to their employees, is a whole life policy. You can be selective on who you offer this plan to. Where like as a 401k, you have to offer that plan to all of your employees. Basically, you can't be discriminating, right? But in a whole life world, you can discriminate and you can pick and choose who you want to offer this plan to, right? So I think that's really cool. Just with different benefits of how you can structure these policies. So that's one way, with the key man and insurance, then also kind of tying into the executive bonus plans. Now, let's go a little bit deeper into the executive bonus plans, because you can actually create a income stream for your employee, assuming that they're going to be with you for a long, long time. You know what I mean? Because let's say, this is the example I use all the time. I'm trying to think of another example, but let me just use this one. Let me see where my thoughts take me. But let's say I have Susie within my office, and Susie is a great worker. I want to keep her. I want to retain her. And so I really want to incentivize her to stay with me for a long, long time. So what you could even write up within a contract between you and Susie, your employee, is you can say, hey, Susie, if you plan to stay with me for 20 years or longer, I'm just making up a year. You can do whatever you want, right? You're in control of this. But Susie, if you stay with me for 20 years or longer, I am going to guarantee you an income stream of $4,000 a month at the time that you reach age 65. So if Susie stays with me for those 20 years, I'm going to guarantee her an income stream of that 4,000 a month that we agreed on. And yes, we have this all written down. This is within paperwork. This is not just a verbal contract here. And at age 65, I will start paying her out this 4,000 a month income stream. And how do I do that? I use the cash values from the policy to do that. That's one way. What about this? If you really wanted to, I don't really recommend this because I kind of want to keep the vehicle of the appreciating asset that the whole life policy is. But Susie, if you stay with me for 20 years or longer, at the time you reach age 65, I will then transfer the ownership of this policy over to you. And now you can use it. You can keep paying the premiums if you want. You can stop paying premiums, reduce pay up that policy contract. And then now you can use that cash value for whatever free will that you want to use it for. And then also now, because you've taken over the ownership of this policy, you can now update the beneficiary of that policy, name it whoever you want. Because side note, in a whole life policy, you can always update the owner and the beneficiary at any time throughout the policy's life. The only thing that just can't change in a policy contract is the insured person, so whoever that death benefit is on. So you could actually even go the route of giving the ownership of this policy over to that employee at whatever day or time within the future. And that's another way of how you can give them some benefits and retain them and keep that loyalty. Because, right, I say this all the time too. The hardest part about business is finding the good help and keeping and retaining that good help. So you want to incentivize them. And it's kind of fun, right? Too, being business owners, like you kind of get to a point within your business journey that it's so much more than just creating cash flow and wealth for your family. You kind of get into this mindset of, oh my goodness, now people are relying on me. I'm the one who supports their household and their livelihood. And you kind of have this like, you get another fire underneath your butt because you're like, I really want to be here and I want to help my people because they're helping me. I need to make sure that I'm here and I'm going to help them. So it's been kind of fun as I've been going down this whole journey of, being a business owner. So that's one way that you could do these policies with the Key Man insurance. Now, to get technical, okay, because I have my notes here. Like I had a meeting, and this is so funny that these notes come from a notebook that I have when I was in my van back in 2024. Hold on. Allergies are kicking in. I gotta sneeze. Excuse me. So this is actually comes from a notebook. I was in my van in 2024, February of 24, and I was actually tracking my van miles because, hey, my van, I use it for business. I'm traveling around. I go to these different live speaking events. And so those miles, I'm using it for some tax deductions within my business. So I remember that this conversation happened when I was in the van early in 2024. And when I was talking with one of the insurance companies, One America to be specific, there are some guidelines of how much that you can actually get on that key person within your business. And so the note that I have is that they'll allow 5 times the salary in death benefit. So just to kind of give y'all like some guidelines there. Obviously, schedule a call with a money mentor, even myself. We can talk one-on-one together to talk more specifics, but just to kind of give you some guidelines of what like the insurance companies would offer on like the Key Man employee policy side, it's about 5 times their salary in the death benefit. Okay, so that's Key Man. Let me see my comments. Good morning, Dexter. Hello, my good friend. Mike, good morning. Tess, good to see you. And Mike says, bless you. All right. And Steve, I see you coming in from Instagram. Good morning to you as well. So, okay. So that's Key Man coverage. Now let's switch gears and let's talk about business owners and let's talk about essentially buy-sell agreements. And then also it's buy-sell agreements cross purchase, and entity purchase insurance. Okay, so we're going to kind of get into those different specifics. But a buy sell agreement, I would say, is probably the most common because most of the time, when in small business owners, there's no more probably than about 2 or 3 owners of that company. But when we're getting into having 4 or more owners, that's when I would switch to the entity purchase insurance. So I'm going to talk about that next, but let's talk about buy sell agreements, especially like I was actually just talking to a husband and wife yesterday. They're chiropractors out in Virginia. And I asked them, they own their business 50-50 together, right? Even though they're spouses, they're still business owners, which I have this thought. Let me just get this thought out. If you are in business with your spouse or a family member, if this is helpful, because it has been helpful in my life, when y'all are having conversations, because sometimes I know the lines can get blurred when you're at home, you're trying to live the family life, but then maybe your spouse or that person in your family comes home, then you start having business conversations. We use a term in the Kessler family. And let's say we're having dinner together and then mom or dad starts talking about business. I'm like, Mom, Dad, I love you, but I have my daughter hat on right now, not my employee hat. So let's just have daughter conversations right now. And that has been really helpful with like setting boundaries and just communicating and not neglecting those other areas of your relationship, right? Because I mean, there's been some times like when I got into the business 18, 19 years old, there was a time where even like my daughter father, daughter mother relationship kind of went to the back burner because it was all building the business, right? And it was just always business conversations. So it's kind of fun now that we learned our boundaries. And when we have these conversations that we can get back to the different talks and having those different conversations because, hey, I got my daughter hat on right now, or I have my employee hat on right now, and I'm just laying down those boundaries. Anyways, side note, that has been helpful. So let's take these chiropractors, for instance, husband and wife, 50-50 ownership. And what a buy sell agreement is, it's a contract between the co-owners that outlines what happens if one graduates, dies, retires, or they leave. And so the life insurance provides the funding mechanics for the buyout. So there could be a cross purchase buy sell agreement, meaning that the owners own a policy on each other. I'm going to make up names. Let's say it's why can't I think of names right now? Let's say it's Lucas and Tina. Okay, Lucas and Tina. So Lucas would buy a policy on Tina, and Lucas would be the beneficiary of Tina's policy. And then Tina would buy a policy on Lucas, and Tina would be the beneficiary of Lucas's policy. So essentially, they're buying policies on one another. And most of the time, the premium's the exact same. The death benefit has to be the exact same. And really, what they would do is, let's make believe that this their company is worth $3 million. Okay. So what would happen is Lucas would buy 1.5 million on Tina in death benefit, and then Tina would buy 1.5 million in death benefit on Lucas. So at the time that someone decides to leave or pass away, then that death benefit would get paid out to that surviving owner of the business. And then now they have the funds to buy out that other person's spouse or their family, right? Because they still have some equity and ownership share within that business. And so they're going to want to get bought out at the time of that other person's passing. So buy-sell agreements are very common. Also, it's very helpful because then you don't get into some tax situations, right? When you're trying to sell the business and different things. It's also a policy is, I say it all the time, it's an appreciating asset. And so a policy on the corporate books is an asset to that business as well. So they could buy it within personal names and own the policy on one another. And always, right, they can use the cash values during this time to fund for business expenses. And then obviously that death benefit's going to be there when that time happens. They need to buy out that other spouse or whoever is left over from the survivorship. So cross purchase is when an individual is owning that policy on the other business owner individually. And then the entity purchase is when the business owns the policy on the business owners. Okay, so I mean, the entity purchase, it's good when you're using mutually owned whole life policies because it makes the buyout self-funding and tax efficient, like I mentioned. But what would happen here is the business would own the policy on all of the different business owners, and then the business would actually be the beneficiary of that policy. And when it is an entity purchase insurance like this, go talk to your CPA, your tax professional. I'm not a tax professional here, but actually those premiums can normally be write-offs or deductions for the business. So see if you qualify for that if your business does own that policy. And something that I haven't totally gone deep down quite yet, because right now, like where my mindset's at, I'm doing this offline, but I'm really going deep into like tax strategies. But I'm curious if my business owns my policies. If we have any attorneys here, okay, chime in, please. But if my business owns my policies, if my business ever gets sued, can that person come after my policy asset because it's owned by the business? Is it now no longer a protected asset? I understand that's going to be probably state specific, but any attorneys in here, if you got any suggestions on that or feedback, I would love to know. But that I've just heard that around the grapevine, so that's why Brent in the chiropractic days, that's why he would just personally own all the policies because it is a protected asset when he would personally own them. And so if the business does own them, like I said, is it now not protected because the business owns it? Now it's open to the business books. And if your business ever gets sued, you know what I mean? But then the pro to it is that, hey, my premiums could be counted as tax deductions. I kind of like that aspect of it, right? So anyways, go do your own due diligence. If you want help with that, hey, put me on the mission. I'll do it. Okay. If you're thinking about starting a policy, I'll help you. but I'm curious about that one. All right, so that's entity purchase insurance. Now, something I want to bring up to y'all is that One America, I'm going to shout them out for a second. One America actually has a business evaluation service. Normally, this is going to cost y'all like right around $5,000 to go get your business evaluated of what it's worth. But actually, One America has a service that it costs only $25 to evaluate your business and the cost of your business. No, the evaluation of your business. Yeah, that's the right word. It costs $25, and what they're needing is 2 to 3 years of your past tax returns. So just a service that's out there if you are kind of thinking about exiting or you've been in business for a while, you want to get an updated numbers on where you're at within your business worth. Just know that service is there, and I can always connect you with the person at One America who I would recommend to talk to about this. But that's a really, really cool aspect that I thought they had. So as we mentioned, right, you can have key employees, you could do cross purchase agreements, you could do entity purchase agreements, offer it as compensation plans, right? Like deferred compensation plans for your high earners who want additional tax advantages, accumulations that's outside of 401ks. The business uses the policy cash value to fund future supplemental income, aka retirement, how we were talking about. And you can use your own business to become your own pension provider. I mean, literally, that's what it is. We're essentially setting up like a pension plan for us through cash value whole life insurance. And we're using the living benefits of the cash values today. And then in the future, it's also like a double whammy that now I can provide this steady income stream to myself. Y'all, if you missed that episode, I think I did it back in August or September of my Money Mornings. I titled it Invisible Income. You need to go back and watch Invisible Income because I show y'all specifically from a policy illustration. So if you like the numbers, go back and rewatch that episode. But I show you how to create tax-free income from your policy. So that's what we're kind of talking about here. So if you want to go deeper down that rabbit hole, go and check out that episode. So you can also use the policy cash value as collateral for the business. I mean, literally, if you really wanted to, doesn't matter if it's for business use, you can also do this in your personal life. You can take your policy down to the bank and use your policy as collateral for a bank loan. I mean, a lot of people do this when we're talking about cash value lines of credit, because sometimes there's these banks that will give you a cash value line of credit, let's say for 3%, where the insurance companies may be charging you 6 to 7%. So some people like to save a little bit on that money. I always come back. I don't do cash value lines of credit personally because I just always come back to who's in control of that transaction. And I'd rather be in control of it rather than having to pay that banker. But again, I have gone down to the banks and borrowed cheap money to go finance something, because then it just allows my policy cash value to be used for something else that I could be profiting more on, right? So it's just like a big cash flow game. That's all it is. Dad used to hate when I say that, but I say it all the time now. Sorry, Dad. But that's all it is. It's just a big cash flow game. How can I smartly move and use my cash flow? Shout out to Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game that he has. All of us should be playing that with our kids, just FYI. All right. So yes, you could take your policy down to the bank. You put it up for collateral because, right, remember who's the number one purchasers of whole life insurance in the world? Conventional banks. Go look up BOLI, BOLI. It stands for bank owned life insurance. So they're the ones who get this like nobody else. And so they'll gladly take your policy all day long. And you know what? Banks, they don't buy IULs. They only buy whole life policies. I'm going to do a whole episode on that here soon. There's been a lot more IUL conversations been coming up. So I'll do a Money Mornings episode on IULs versus whole life. But let's just go back and let's see what these big banks are doing. Are big banks buying IULs? No, they're buying whole life policies. And that's what they want as the collaterals. They want the guarantees from that whole life policy. So business retains control of the policy growth and the death benefit. And I want to say you should only use, okay? If you don't want to do this with us over here at the Money Multiplier, my biggest advice is at least work with somebody who is a certified infinite banking concepts practitioner through the Nelson Nash Institute, and make sure you are working with a mutually owned life insurance company, okay? Because then we have the control, we have the dividends. Another piece of feedback I would even give y'all too is use your segregated checking accounts, for your policy transactions. This has been extremely helpful to my bookkeeper. She loves me for this because the dollars that come out of your policy is always going to be tax-free money to us. So I always have my policy money go into a separate segregated checking account, because then I know that it's tax-free money and I'm not commingling it with my main business account where all of my active income gets paid into. I mean, I even have which you should be doing this, but I even have, like, for my lending business, I have a whole other checking account just specifically for that. And so when you start to kind of create these different entities and different bank accounts and keeping the things separate, it's just a lot easier to track your stats, but then also report it back for, the tax season, tax time. So nothing changes though. I mean, literally, that I think this is why Nelson calls it the infinite banking concept, because you can set up the policies infinite different ways. You can use the cash values for infinitely whatever you want to use it for, when you want to use it for. And then there's always going to be that death benefit that gets paid out lump sum tax free at the time of that individual's passing. And I hear all the time, like I'm sitting here, and the thought that I have in my head is, why are more people not doing this? You know what I mean? Even y'all, when I'm on the phone with y'all and we're having our one-on-one strategy calls, you guys ask me all the time, why are more people not doing this? And I'm bashing my head against the wall thinking the same thing, because I mean, if people truly understood the power but behind dividend paying whole life when you structure it for that high immediate cash value, I mean, it just checks all of the boxes off, that I'm getting out of the government's hair. I still have control over the money. I still have liquidity. It's not going to grow or go down in value based on the S&P or what people decide to do in the world. And my biggest ask of the community and my people watching me this morning, spread the message, spread the love. I mean, seriously, you need to talk about this to your communities, to your family. I know and I get it. They're probably not going to chirp up and listen immediately, but lead by example and just keep spreading this message, because you're helping people. You're helping people take back the control of their money life. And I always say, if you were my friend and you knew about this information and didn't tell me, I'd be so freaking pissed off at you. Just saying. Okay. So, to give y'all just some live examples, there's a gentleman who lives here in my town and he owns appliance stores. And so what he will do is every quarter, he will take loans from his policy, go buy new inventory to restock his floor. Is that what they call it? The floor, So he will go and take out loans every quarter to go restock the inventory. And then over that next quarter, he pays himself back into the policy. And then he takes out another loan, goes buy inventory again, and then pays himself back again. So he's just literally like rinse and repeating that same cycle with this policy. And think about it almost like a revolving line of credit, right? I mean, you could do this. Do I totally recommend this? I think there could be better ways that you could use the cash value, but let's say that you use it as a revolving line of credit just for like your business expenses on your business credit card. If I'm spending, let's say, 5,000 a month on this business credit card and I'm doing pay-per-click ads on Meta or on Google, Bing, whatever it is, I can make that charge to the credit card, get all the flying miles, cash back, all the perks there. And then when the statement comes due, take a loan from the policy, pay off the credit card statement. And then over the course of that next month, my income that I produce, I pay back the policy loan. I put the expenses back on the credit card. And then I take another policy loan for that next month to pay off the credit card statement. So, right, you're kind of using it as this like revolving line of credit. But obviously, you got to be disciplined with this stuff, right? I mean, if you're spending more than what you make, no, I do not recommend this strategy. But if you're disciplined and you know how your cash flow is performing and how you're using the credit cards and stuff, it could be a great asset and a great tool for you to use the policy to be an honest banker, keep the money stored there, get the perks of the credit card, and then just using it in that manner, right? So that's another way of how you can be using it. I also have this whole vision, not to go down, this could be like a whole other episode, but churches, y'all, churches, I've gone, if Miss Diana is listening to me right now, good morning, Miss Diana. We got to have another conversation here soon. About a year ago, I went out to Ocala, Florida, and I got invited to speak to a group of, the church out there, right? So it was on Sunday, Mass got over. And then after Mass is when I was able to share this message on infinite banking. And that's when it clicked with me that I'm like, oh my goodness, if this church were to put a policy on the pastor, and let's say the key people within this church organization, do you know how beneficial of that legacy that could be left to that church? And then on top of that, this is something that I haven't gone down the rabbit hole on, but because of how churches are taxed, would it even matter that that policy becomes a modified endowment contract, a MEC? Because the church owns it, the church is paying it. Does it even matter? I don't know. But I was having a conversation with a money mentor on my team this week, and he's going to go down that journey and really help and get this message out to churches as well. Because could you imagine when money goes into that policy? Okay, it's on the pastor's body. And then when the pastor passes, there's going to be that death benefit that gets paid to the church. And then now this money can be used to give back to the church, expand the church, that's a whole vision that I have as well of, just specifically of how churches could be using this too. So looking over my notes here, we explained that. So just kind of like just a recap, right? We talked about a key man, cross purchase, entity purchase, business uses of the policy, church uses of the policy. And I'll end it with this, if a company loses a founder without key man insurance, it could fold overnight. And with a properly structured IBC policy, they have the liquidity to hire leadership, pay off debt, and keep the doors open. And then on the flip side, a two-partner business, when they use the buy-sell policies, one passes, let's say, unexpectedly, and the surviving partner uses the death benefit to purchase the deceased shares smoothly without any tension or trying to scramble around and find the money. I mean, it just comes back to this statement. As Brent Kessler always says, a failure to plan is a plan to fail. So if these are things that you've been just thinking about here recently, especially how to use policies within your business, send me an email, reach out. We can have a one-on-one conversation here. Here's my email posted up down below, hannah@themoneymultiplier.com. But you can really build wealth for the business, keep it protected, keep it within the family, within the business, within that entity. And then you're not relying on Wall Street or banks. And again, it's not all about the death benefit, but the death benefit is a huge, huge component and important here. But it is truly about the financial independence, the control, and really the stewardship of what you're building over there for your business. So, hey, y'all, I mean, if you're a business owner, you don't have the funding plan for emergencies, the growth or succession. I mean, it's almost like you're kind of flying without a parachute. So let's fix that. So hopefully this episode was helpful. I wanted just to really dive deeper into business owners, how we're using policies here, because there's a lot of different ways of how you can be using it. Because again, it doesn't matter what you use the cash value for. You can use it for literally anything. But it is a good tool and a resource to retain, keep your employees engaged, protect yourself, protect your family, protect your business. So it just kind of, like I said, it just checks off a lot of the boxes over there. So, all right, before I head out, let me see some of these comments. Good morning, Mr. Shane. Shane, it was good to see you in Colorado last week. So hopefully y'all are doing well. I am actually thinking about that. Today I'm headed to Orlando. Okay, so calling all of my Central Florida residents. I'm going to be in Orlando tonight. Tomorrow, I'm going to be speaking at an event. It's called the 100 Millionaire Summit. A lot of great people, a lot of wealth of knowledge, real estate investors, attorneys, estate planners, protections, trusts, wills. I'm going to be speaking about infinite banking, right? So if that interests you, the event's going from Friday to Sunday this weekend. I'll be there on Friday. I'll be there on Sunday. And then Friday night, I'm going to be flying out, going up to Indianapolis. Shout out Dr. Kyle. Dr. Kyle's event is on Saturday this week. I'm going to be meeting my pops up there, and we're going to be sharing the message of infinite banking to physicians, orthopedic surgeons to be specific here. And so I'll be in Indianapolis on Saturday. Holler at your girl. And then I'll be back here in Orlando on Sunday just to finish out that day. So Florida, Indianapolis, call my peeps. If you're out and about in the area, holler at your girl. So we will be out there. Which, speaking of, actually, Jamie told me I need to probably pack a coat. See, because down here in Florida, it's still pretty nice. I mean, I think it's like in the 70s right now. It's 74 outside is what my phone's telling me. But up north, I sometimes forget. I mean, when it gets into the winter months and then I have to hop on an airplane and fly north and I get off the airplane, I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to bring a jacket. Yep. Shane says, interesting because churches are nonprofit entities. Consult your tax advisor. Yes, sir, Dexter. I wonder if it's the same or could be true for a foundation. So actually, Shane, that's a good point too. Let's talk about this real quick before I'll go. I have my foundation. It's called the Speaking Life Foundation. And all I use my foundation for right now is I have a policy that funds that foundation. And then what I do is I loan the money out to different borrowers on investments, real estate, right? And when that money gets loaned out, it's working for me. And so every month those investors are paying me back. That money goes back to the foundation. And then what I do is I donate everything out of that foundation every year. And so I really want to do a lot more with the foundation that I have. And I asked Joel Osteen this, okay? So I had the opportunity. I know some people are like, Joel Osteen, no. Okay, but here, just hear me out. I had the opportunity to sit during Joel Osteen's sermon one morning when I was in Houston and then also get to meet him. And I asked him that question. I said, hey, Joel, what advice would you give to somebody trying to figure out what's important to them? And he goes, you just need to look to Jesus. That was his response to me. You just need to look to Jesus. I said, okay, Joel, I get it. But man, I wish you had some more actionable steps here for me. and so, that's what I'm really trying to figure out to do. And I don't know, could it still be true? And Shane, I'm assuming what you're saying is, could that policy, if the foundation owns it, because my foundation doesn't own it. Hannah owns it personally. Then I loan money to the foundation. If the foundation owns it, could it be MEC'd and then not have to have any of the tax consequences like the normal modified endowment rules? I don't know. So as I keep evolving down this journey, setting up these different entities, figuring out the tax strategies, I'm going to be bringing this stuff to y'all. So last thing before I let y'all go, this is something, the reason I'm going down this whole mission for y'all is coming up in Tampa. It's going to be February 27th to March 1st. Tampa, Florida, Money Game Live is coming back. Let me put this down here. moneygamelive.com. Okay, so registration is open for that. It's going to be myself and Larry Steinhaus co-hosting this event. A lot of y'all came out last year. Last year we had 100 people in Tampa. This year, hopefully, we'll see more of your faces. But, we just got done with the Denver event, right? And the Denver event is the Money Multiplier Mastermind. And that event was really for understanding and building the foundation to where we keep our money, protecting our money, and creating that living legacy and even the legacy after we're no longer here. And so Money Game Live is for my investors. Okay, Hannah, now that I understand the foundation, of my policies, how I'm storing my money. I'm understanding my cash flow deeper. Now, what should I be doing with my little green men, my dollars? And so this is where I bring out my experts in the oil and gas industry, the residential assisted living, private lenders. If you've ever heard of Padlock or short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, if you like stock options trading, so I'm bringing all of my experts here so that y'all can dabble and figure out what you like to invest in. And then once you figure out what you like, then you will know and understand it deeper, and you'll be walking away with the systems, the mentors, the mindset that when you leave the event, I really want you to start putting your little green men to work, creating some passive income to you, yourself, and your family. So check out Money Game Live. Early bird is pricing is out, and that's going to end, I want to say, on the 13th of November. So y'all got a little time, but don't sit on the sidelines for too long because it happens every year. I'm going to bitch for a second because it happens every year. I give y'all so many deadlines. I give you reminders that the early bird pricing is going away. And then what do? That next day after the early bird pricing goes away, you're like, Hannah, I'm so sorry. I missed the early bird pricing. Can you please honor it for me? Come on, y'all. So make sure you snag it before the early bird pricing goes away, okay? So that's coming up, Mr. Larry Steinhaus. I'll be seeing you actually out in Orlando as well. So it'll be good to see you, my man. But as always, I appreciate y'all for being here. I will be back next Thursday, 9 a.m. Eastern time. I'm hoping to have a guest with me next week. Okay. So I'm asking this individual right now, and that's going to be a really fun and cool episode too. That will be more for my W2 corporate people. Okay. So today we talked about business owners. Next week, I really want to talk about you as a W2 corporate person and what you could be doing with the policies, and even just with some of the other vehicles that you have, your IRAs, your 401ks, your brokerage accounts, don't matter. I'm going to be hitting on y'all next week. So thank you for being here for another episode. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see all of you beautiful people next week. Until then, bye, y'all.